What's up, guys? Welcome back to DCS World and of course my continuing tutorial series for the A-10C Warthog. In this video we're going to begin the somewhat daunting task of taking a look at the CDU. CDU, or Control Display Unit, is our primary interface for this airplane's navigation system. I'm not going to go over all of the functions of the CDU because that would probably take in a week. So let's be honest here. We don't have that much time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight some of the what I consider essential functions that you will use commonly with the CDU. Show you generally how to use them and just the best sort of a best practice for using the CDU for most of your missions. You're not going to need a lot of the advanced functions of the CDU in most cases. They are there if you want to explore them. There's a lot of reference material out there to learn the real ins and outs of the CDU, but I'm going to teach you just the essentials. So, the CDU, let's get my camera going here. As I mentioned in the cockpit tour video, let me see if I can... good enough. All right. The CDU is this guy here. We've got a screen with some data on it. We've got a number keypad, and we have a letters keyboard. There is a couple of functions that we can do here. First of all, the CDU has what's called a scratch pad. You see this cursor right here underneath my mouse blinking? That's an input cursor. If we start typing things on the keypad, so like let's say LOL, I now put LOL into that scratch pad. Now the scratch pad is basically just a line of text that hasn't been assigned anywhere yet. So if we want to enter data into the CDU, we first enter it into the scratch pad, and then we use one of the side buttons here to apply it. Now, we can't really do that on this page right here because we're on the alignment page. When you first fire the airplane up and you first fire up the CDU, it's going to default to this alignment page, and this is the page you use to inspect and monitor the alignment of your airplane's navigation system, the INS, Inertial Navigation System. We know it's aligned because I mentioned before in the startup video that we see T equals 4.0 space 0.8. That's the alignment. 4 minutes to an accuracy of 0.8. Okay? That's how you know that it's aligned. Now, if we want to do some of the different functions, what I like to do is we can go to the nav page here. We can get back to, and again, there's some buttons along here labeled sys, nav, waypoint, offset, flight plan management, previous, and then there's a dimmer switch. Not really all that important. We can go to our alignment page. We have a time management page, so we can adjust our desired times on target. Not something I use all that much unless you're building a mission around that. You can set a actual date and year. Currently in this mission it's the year 2019, it's the month of March, and it's the first day of March. Whatever, not really all that important. Click nav again. DTS upload, we could reload the CDU if we needed to. This, oops, ignore that. That button there, what I just clicked, that triggered a master caution, was it changed the navigation mode of the navigation system from blended to, it can switch between a blend of the INS and GPS. It can go GPS only. It can also go INS only. 99.9% of the time, you're going to leave this as blended. Attributes, you're not necessarily going to touch too much. options you're not necessarily going to touch too much. You can change the displayed headings from magnetic to the MGRS grid and back. It'll mostly be at magnetic. You've also got a divert function. So if you click on divert, you're going to get a list of airports here. So we're currently sitting at Abu Dhabi International Airport on the Persian Gulf map, so that's the closest airport to us. But this list of airports will be the closest airports to your present position. You can then use one of the side push buttons that lines up with them to select it, and you'll get some field info for that airport. So this is Sas Al Nakil Airport. It's airport identifier number 71 in our database. Those numbers are arbitrary, don't worry about them. Field elevation is 10 feet. You've got runways 16 and runway 34. They are 5,387 feet, long. If it had an ILS frequency, it would be listed here. If it had a TACAN frequency, it would be listed here. And you've got approach and tower frequencies here. If there was a UHF frequency, it would be listed here. You've got a VHF frequency here. So that's a quick way to get some information about an airfield that you might want to divert to. Okay, and that's roughly all of the information you'll need from the nav setting. Now, if we go to the waypoint menu, we see WP menu. We can select our steer point. So this would be information regarding our current, our first steer point. We go back, anchor point. We can set an anchor point to where, we might anchor. We can also manipulate functions regarding bullseye. Now, in bullseye, as I mentioned before, when we briefly looked at the TAD page, bullseye is just a known reference point on a map in a given theater, usually set in the mission editor where the bullseye is for a particular mission or a particular campaign. We have a function here for HUD on and HUD off. Currently it defaults to HUD off. If I tick this, it's then going to give us bullseye information up on the HUD, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Okay, back to the waypoint menu. We've got a waypoint button. If we wanted to manipulate this current waypoint, we could change the coordinates of this waypoint. So you can see our northing and easting here. So northing and easting GPS coordinates. We could change the elevation. We could change its name. Its name is the airport. We could copy this information to a new waypoint using this button here. We could change from lat long to grid or UTM. So you can see we now have grid information as well as lat long coordinates if we want to cycle between them. We can set desired time on target. So if we needed to be at a target at a specific time, we could set the time, and then you will get some information on how fast or how slow we need to fly to get there. A lot of times you won't use that unless your specific mission calls for it. But it's not a function you're necessarily going to use all that much. A function you will use quite often is manipulating and changing waypoints, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. We're not actually going to do it from this screen. I'm going to show you how to do it primarily what I like to do from the upfront controller, or UFC, actually. So we'll look at that in just a minute. We also have a from point function here. This is if you wanted to set sort of like a starting point to go from a waypoint to another waypoint. I don't use this much, so honestly don't worry about it. We can set offset information. I don't really know or manipulate this really all that often. It's not very useful to me. Flight plan management. So this is where we would manually build a flight plan. Let's say we configured a whole bunch of waypoints manually in the airplane, and we wanted to convert them into a flight plan. Now you see here, flight plan, MSN auto, FP build, yada, yada, yada. What this is actually the automatically constructed flight plan that's made from the waypoints that are set in the mission editor. So if this airplane was placed in the mission editor and the mission creator set a whole bunch of waypoints, they would automatically get converted into a flight plan here. I'm not going to show you how to convert existing waypoints or newly created waypoints into a flight plan, because for the majority of your missions, you're going to have predetermined waypoints that you're going to need. These will they'll already be programmed, so you're not necessarily going to need to use this. But basically, you just kind of give it the name, the number, and you add it to the flight plan from here. System page, some stuff to manipulate the EGI, the INS, the GPS, etc. You're not going to really touch this too much. The LASTE function is I forget exactly what it stands for. I'll put an annotation in the video because I'm gonna have to look that up for what LASTE stands for. But what it is wind correction data. So if there's wind and there's a known wind speed and a known wind direction, you can actually set this up in here, and then it'll apply wind correction to things such as weapon drops or your autopilot or any such things. Let's now look back up front, and we're going to look, I'm going to sort of angle this sort of like that, because I want you to be able to see this MFD, and I want you to be able to see this big keypad up here. If you remember in the startup video, I mentioned that the CDU, its screen can be mirrored on one of the MFDs. So normally it would go up on the left MFD here, and you see I have CDU selected, and we're looking at that same LASTE page that we were looking at before. I'm just going to go up to the UFC here and click Function, and then let's say Steer Point. Okay. This is giving us info about our current steer point. Our current steer point, as we selected a divert base before, is set to Sasal-Nakheel Air Base. Okay, so we're getting information on our current steer point. It's saying our distance here is 8.3 miles. The elevation is 10 feet. Our bearing to that steer point is 275 degrees. It's also displaying our current airspeed, which is nothing right now, so ignore that. You know, ground speed is 0, whatever. What I want to show off is how we can actually modify this to create a new waypoint. So you see here there's a shortcut waypoint, and we can use the side buttons of the MFD here to select this waypoint function. So if I click this, we're now on the waypoint page for that Sasal-Nakheel waypoint. See the name here, we see the same data as before, we also see the coordinates, north and east. Let's say we wanted to create a new waypoint, an entirely new waypoint. We have this button here, copy existing waypoint data, and the tooltip disappeared. Copy existing waypoint data into new mission point and enter a new name from Scratchpad. If we click this, we now have a completely new blank waypoint that has the same data as our previous waypoint. The default name is Mission 0. You can actually change this name using the keypad below with the letters, or you can give it numbers if you want. We can then change the elevation, and we can change the coordinates. So let's do that here. So what I'm actually going to do is let's set a waypoint. I'm going to actually open up the F10 map here. You can see where we are. We're sitting on the ground at Abu Dhabi International. Let's say I wanted to set a waypoint of Al Maktoum Airport over here. Now the A-10, just from a functionality standpoint, can look up this airport, but let's say I wanted to set a specific waypoint at a spot on the ground just off the airfield here, right? To make it easy on myself, I'm going to create a map mark. Boom. I can name it new waypoint. Now this has nothing to do with the actual adding of the waypoint, but it's going to help us out. So If you look on the top, we have our coordinates readout here. The A-10 works in both MGRS units, so the grid UTM coordinates, or it works in GPS northing and easting coordinates using a degree, minute, and then decimal minute format. So if I press Alt-Y, let's see, there we go. We're now, if you look in the top left corner of the screen, we now see degree, minute, decimal minute. And that's roughly how the A-10C works. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these coordinates now. So that first coordinate is 24 degrees, 53.881. So let's press F1 to go back to our screen. And I'm going to enter this data using the UFC up here, because you see we have this keypad. Let me just go back to the F10, make sure I had it right. So that's 2453881. So we'll go 2453881. You can see that this information is now in our scratch pad. Now those numbers by themselves don't mean anything until we assign them somewhere. So we're going to click this button here, which is going to assign that number to this field, the northing field, the latitude field of this waypoint. Boom. Okay? 2453.881 is now our north coordinate, our latitude coordinate. We now need to get our longitude. So for that, let's also go back to the F10 map. Take a look at this coordinate here. It looks like it's about 5508096. So let's go back. Now we need to give it a leading 0 because longitude can go above 100. So we need to go 055. Let me just double check again. 05508096. So we have 05508096. See the numbers here? We're going to click this button next to the longitude, the easting. Boom. We've now assigned that number to the longitude coordinate, and now this waypoint is right here. We can also give it a elevation, and we should, because currently our system thinks this waypoint is underground. Because if you look, the elevation up here, where my mouse cursor is 95 feet. And, oh, actually, I stand corrected. The system is smart enough to know that the ground at that point in space is at 95 feet above sea level, so it automatically set that. It sometimes doesn't, especially if an existing waypoint that you're using is above the ground, so just bear in mind that you may have to edit this value. Let's say we needed to edit it. So again, from the F10 map, we know that it's 95 feet. We would type in 95 into the scratch pad and then click, boom. For the heck of it, I'm going to change it. So let's make it 500. Okay, it's 500, but we want that waypoint on the ground. 95. Boom. Okay. If we wanted to enter these with using MGRS UTM coordinates, there's a button over here to switch from lat long to UTM. So if we do that, we now have our grid number, our theater number, our subgrid number, and then the grid coordinates. I could quite frankly do a whole video on just using UTM, but this is something you're best to research on yourself. It's kind of outside the scope of using the CDU outside of basic functions. You could do just as well to stick to lat and long, and you'll get by just fine. Now, how do we actually select that waypoint? Let me unpause the camera, look forward here. I have to make sure my HUD is soy. Easy way is to go down here and select mission. And I'm using my data management switch to scroll through. Okay, so normally you would see here waypoint 0 is init posit or initial position. If we do DMS up, it selects waypoint 1. And if we look over at our CDU, we're still viewing the waypoint page for mission 001 here, but now we have SP. SP indicates that this is our current steer point. Okay? A lot to wrap your head around because the CDU is a very complex instrument. It is essentially a fully fledged flight computer and can plan out a flight from beginning to end with lots of different data points, data functions. This is very basic what I've shown you here, but it's really all you need to get going. I may do a video in the future with some more advanced functions of the CDU, but it may or may not be needed, but we'll see. Let me know in the comments if you want to see that, but that'll be mostly up to you guys. But for now, hope that helps, and I'll see you guys for the next video. Take care.